So my case for making selfish art is by having learnt the lesson the hard way myself and relearnt the lesson again recently. So I thought I'd just share with you because this year I have produced a sort of first issue of a newsletter, about 4,000 words of spoken word poetry, lots of works in progress, things that are difficult for me to actually film and share. I have not a very nice illness and it limits my functional capacity, and just imagine it as having a broken battery and an allergy to overexertion, except every time you aggravate that allergy, your battery limit gets smaller and smaller. My functional capacity sits at, I think it's 2.2 at the moment, which is kind of the highest it's been in the last 3 years, out of 6. So if you're a well person, able-bodied person, you're at 6 and I'm at 2, if that helps you understand a little bit of context here. So when I first became severe, it happened very suddenly, after I overexerted one last time too hard. And it was terrifying, and I really needed the people in my life at that point, literally, to keep me alive, because I couldn't feed myself, etc. And all I could think to do to give back was to make artwork to give back. And I had been at a fine art school doing my degree, and unfortunately couldn't finish because of my health. And I was pretty snobby about digital painting. I've never really wanted to share stuff online either. It's always been more fine arts, and I wanted to be a creative director or an artistic director. Yeah, the thing was that I suddenly couldn't sit at a desk and paint or draw. I'm lying down right now to talk to you because that's the easiest way for me to not overexert while having this little documentation, a little testimony and all of that, archiving as I am. Look, I had to learn to digitally draw, and I got an iPad and learnt very slowly, and I mostly did that by drawing pictures of my friends' pets, pictures of my mum's garden, portraits, and slowly over about 2 years refined the skill. And I enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it. Yet it wasn't doing something for me, and I was encouraged at the beginning of this year to really focus on my own work and make stuff for myself. Someone generously showed some interest in my older work and encouraged me to get back to it in whatever way I could. And so this year I have dedicated my tiny little broken battery, and I will point out that I'm in an extreme position of privilege to be able to manage my energy this way, because I am afforded the luxury of care and support, and the people in my life really want me to prioritize archiving my voice and sharing work and creating work, because they know that it's the best way for me to live well whilst I am as unwell as I am, because this is a particularly isolating, debilitating, traumatizing, and then re-traumatizing over and over again, relentless illness. Yeah, it's hard to overly indulge around ME in terms of how not good it is, in terms of how low your quality of life is. But it just felt really good to be giving back to the people in my life, and that was the only way I could think to do it. So the compromise I came to was to produce a yearly newsletter. So I started writing more because I could make notes in my notes app, or on days I couldn't look at my screen, I could write a little few words, etc. Slowly over this year, I've been using low-dose naltrexone, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, and more recently red light therapy. and in combination with pacing and very strict pacing and trying to rest and learn to emotionally be very regulated, I practice a philosophy that I live by, I create by, I seek catharsis through. It's sort of multifunctioning, and I'll talk about that at length probably for the rest of my years, or for as long as I'm capable, etc. Part of that involves, using my losing hand the best of my ability, and to try and lean into the absurdity, because the uncertainty and the adversity are not going anywhere anytime soon, and I've had to figure out how to not be miserable. And channeling through art, getting to honour who I was or who I wanted to be through the art. I have to compromise. Pacing makes me less than who I am. A lot of this year has been using radical acceptance in a marriage with self-compassion, and working a lot on my nervous system and dysregulation and everything, and creating through that to remind myself that there are some benefits to living this way, and trying to be courageous, to remain creative, to keep connection in the center of my life, and to remember that the people I love and who respect and love me, that's really proper fulfillment for me. And endure and yet expand my capacity to love in the face of that, because that feels like the most defiant thing that I can do. Yeah, so making the work does serve all these different things, and when I don't have the energy to fully embody who I am, the majority of the time, particularly if I'm in post-exertional malaise, I'm half self, I'm in purgatory, I'm not really here, I disassociate. It's I'm cognitively impaired, and so the art is always going to be the most full throttle authentic to myself that I can be. And through all of this, clearly I have lost the usual kind of societal expectations and measures, and those were things that I lived and died by, and literally pushed myself into the ground through my need to achieve and please, and suddenly I find myself in a body that is devalued under capitalism, under a system not built for me, and it totally shatters your belief system. And I'm not religious, but when I talk about faith, the faith that I had in what life was, and what it was going to be, and who I was, and who I was going to be, and all of that was gone. So a complete deconstruction of that, and then also a deconstruction of self, and whilst dealing with symptoms that, not good, very difficult. It continues to be very difficult, and the art is obviously heavy covering all of this, and there are my illness has a lot of discourse surrounding it because of its history, because there's a lot of, I could talk at length about that. I don't think that this is the time to do that, but it adds a weight dealing with disbelief, and all of that is harrowing. But as a result, I suppose my sort of overly self-justifying and also lack of capacity to not communicate authentically and clearly and concisely has meant that my communication skills have improved in terms of being able to get this across. because when you don't have much energy, you want to make what you have to say and share count. You can't be weighed down by the small stuff anymore. And again, that kind of there's some liberation in the amount of shame that comes along with this, and like, I don't really have the energy to deal with that shame, and how can that benefit me? Well, I guess it gives me the stupid kind of bravery that makes me want to talk about this and share it, because I see the value in that, and how else am I going to create a sense of value and purpose for myself when I belong to a world that doesn't see that in me anymore because I'm disabled? So much heaviness here, right, with the art, and I've been incredibly bogged down by all of it. I've been heavily scripting what I've been writing. I've been very stressed about how I'm very cynical about the internet, I'm afraid to say. I think because I had so many years of denial over my disease, and that was in part facilitated by my sort of distraction addiction and inability to be present with discomfort or acknowledge that I wasn't well. You know, that's hard to come through and not feel weighed down and oppressed by, and that there's a huge sense of responsibility to also kind of, ethically produce and share when you've got this disease, and there's so much historical weight and stigma that you're fighting against as well. But I belong to a long line, a historically long line of unwell, disobedient women who were institutionalized and silenced. And I have a voice and an ability to be heard, even if that's only by 12 of my friends. And that's part of the liberation of getting to share online without having these measures of I need to grow and I need to be seen as successful or it's embarrassing. Like, none of that really applies to me. Sharing is kind of a bonus, but as I say, I'm pretty cynical about the internet. So I think that it's been weighing pretty heavy on me that I want to do things right and properly, and of course I am still. I have retained my overly ambitious, sometimes perfectionist kind of self, and all of my making processes are different now. I can't create in the way that I ever used to. I have to compromise so much. I can't, I have the ideas and the skill and the privilege to be able to do and focus on all of this, but I just don't have the health that matches in any reasonable amount. And so incredible frustration has been happening this year. And around my birthday, my best friend and I yearly we do a birthday humiliation ritual. And so she made this bonkers great video for me, and I made one back, and it really reminded me I love absurdity. I don't really take myself that seriously. I've just been forced into a position of having to because of the disease. And I miss that. And that is just as valid as anything else to try and honour and work through and celebrate, I suppose. And so recently I got it into my head that I wanted to make a companion piece to this very wonderful fellow I have up here, this poster of Kendall Roy. I did not design this myself. This is not my own original piece. I can't remember where I found this. Full credit to whoever made this, because it literally, I don't think anything has made me laugh so much in the last few years, and I've needed that laugh. So I decided to make myself a companion piece to match, and one of the scripts I've been working on, which hopefully will eventually see the light of day, has been inspired by Jon Stewart and his use of satire to talk about systemic issues. I'm very interested in bridging the gap between disabled audiences and able-bodied audiences in terms of trying to get more people willing to hear what's going on with my illness, because advocacy is so crucial at this point in the history of the illness, with it being so underfunded and misunderstood still, and being 20 years behind other neurological diseases, still not having the biomedical funding, and patients being neglected and dying in all over the world. Like, it's bad. Again, this is not the video to go into all of that, because I have to do justice. But how can you talk to people about these kind of harrowing systemic things? They don't want to. We have everything everywhere all at once. Our lives are very, very demanding, are they not? It breeds a level of maybe apathy, or not disengagement necessarily, because the whole point is that everything is built on baiting us into, the attention economy. Our time is incredibly valuable, but sometimes that means that it's quite easy to scroll past perhaps the kind of thing that I want to talk about and share about. So I've been looking at Jon Stewart's kind of approach to advocacy through his kind of satirical stuff, and I really, really like this quote from him, and so I created this poster. And it's just silly. It's gonna go up there. It's not up yet. And I'm just sat here thinking how it's the most creatively fulfilled I've been all year. And so hopefully I should listen to those instincts, and even just sitting and talking like this off the top of my head, like with no script and stuff, I've lost confidence in my ability to do that. And I know that that might sound ridiculous if you've listened to 20 minutes of me talking, and you're like, oh, she doesn't seem cognitively impaired or unwell, she looks fine. No, this is taxing for me, and I spend many hours present with discomfort and with my circumstance. I do not get a break. It's 24/7, 365 days of the year. So I've had the last 3 years to really think about life with severe ME. How am I going to approach getting through this without, not wanting to be here at all? I want to share honestly. I like confession, but I always think that authenticity is met with a pretty fickle hand online. I'm still figuring out how to get things out, so being inspired to just sit and record this without deeping too much if I'm missing anything is probably off the back of this Jon Stewart poster, which is kind of crazy because I've spent so much of this year working with this heavy content, trying to figure out how to do it without making myself sick, which I've been trying and failing over and over again. And don't you worry, I've been documenting trying to make art with an energy limiting disease, and I'm sure it will come out to you by 2030 or something like that, because everything takes me so long. And I'm just very grateful for anyone who shows interest, and that is my case for making silly work for yourself. It can have really unexpected positive results, can get you out of the the sort of the dead zone of overthinking and trying to overreach beyond what you can do, and then freezing as a result, which I think loads of artists deal with. It's hard, isn't it? So yeah, thank you for listening, and go and design yourself a niche heartthrob poster, or tell me who you want to see on a poster, and maybe I'll just do them for my friends. Lots of love. Bye bye.